elite hinges on family blood, just as the power structure of the mafia. To show that the word bloodline is not just a figure of speech, let's take a look at the actual facts. Carefully outlined here are the actual lineages of American presidents and their bloodline connected to European aristocracies of power. Starting from Edward II and III of England, 28 out of our 42 presidents were connected by blood, including President Bush and Vice President Quayle, who were also in fact related to each other. Most of the 14 not connected by blood were connected by fraternal orders used by the bloodlines, with only a few exceptions, notably in disruption, the Kennedys, seeking to disrupt this dynasty of power in America. Owing to their vast financial backing and personal intellectual charisma and much behind-the-scenes political maneuvering by his father, Joe Kennedy, John Fitzgerald Kennedy was inserted into the presidency. The idea being to disrupt the status quo by establishing a Kennedy Roman Catholic dynasty, and thereby serving notice on the Freemasonic powers of this world of their unwillingness to cooperate and play by the unwritten rules. Justifiably feeling threatened, the established bloodlines of power in America removed the Kennedy threat. Official police records show that the John Kennedy assassination was closely preceded by and followed by as many as 100 assassinations, all of which were closely connected with the Kennedy family's rise to power. In our discussion of secret societies, Freemasonry, and occult orders in general, we want to talk about one that might be familiar to you, or perhaps you've heard about. It's called the Illuminati. We don't intend to spend a whole lot of time on the Illuminati, but just enough to familiarize yourself if you've never heard of the organization. It was founded in 1776 in the south of Germany by a man named Adam Weishaupt. He formulated his plans in relation to the House of Rothschild in England, Germany, France, Italy. The Rothschild banking dynasty behind the governments of Europe hired Adam Weishaupt to formulate a plan for the world at that time to accomplish certain goals for those in power. That plan came to be known as the Illuminati plan. Now, you can find most of this material in any library, any encyclopedia, under the word Illuminati, which comes from, obviously, the word illumine, to be enlightened, to be in the light. But there's a very important book that I'd like to bring to your attention called Fire in the Minds of Men. It's on the origins of the revolutionary faith. Fire in the Minds of Men, written by James Billington, is a profoundly important book in understanding the revolutionary and radical movements of the world today and how they got here and who finances them and what they're really all about. I'd like to read to you a couple of paragraphs of importance, I think, in dealing with the occult origins of the organizational arrangements, how the occult organizations throughout the world, secret societies, are organized. In it, on page 87, he says, "The story of the secret societies can never be fully reconstructed, and it has been badly neglected, even avoided, one suspects, because of the evidence that is available repeatedly leads us into territory equally uncongenial to modern historians in the East and the West. In what follows, I shall attempt to show that the modern revolutionary tradition as it came to be internationalized under Napoleon, the Restoration, grew out of occult Freemasonry, that the early organizational ideas originated more from Pythagorean mysticism than from practical experience, and that the real innovators were not so much the political activists as literary intellectuals. on whom German Romantic thought in general and the Bavarian Illuminati in particular exerted great influence. Here he was talking about the organization of the Bavarian Illuminati. You can't discuss the Illuminati without understanding the Jesuit order of the Catholic Church, because Adam Weishaupt himself, the founder of the Illuminati, was in fact a Jesuit priest. He was not just an ordinary Jesuit priest, though. In Bavaria, he continued to support revolutionary and radical thinking against the church and has given to the world what has come to be known as the revolutionary tradition. May 1st, 1776 is when Adam Weishaupt founded this order, and that's why, of course, in Soviet Union and other communist countries, that May 1st is considered to be the important day to all communist revolutionaries, because Adam Weishaupt founded the Illuminati on May 1st. This you will find, as I said, in any encyclopedia. The bait that was laid by Adam Weishaupt for control of peoples was a very old and tried project. It was called democracy, a people's democracy. Adam Weishaupt, like many others before him, understood that democracy has never worked, is not working now, and never will work. Basically because of the reason that people, while they could be and are the power of any government, the people are always the power of a government. And that on the surface, democracy seems to be the best of all possible worlds. Democracy is a very bad form of government because the people can be misled. Because democracy means, it comes from the word demos, meaning mob. A mob in the street is a demos. Demosocracy, ocracy meaning rule. Demosocracy or democracy means mob rule. You might say that true democracy is like 35 whites hanging one black. That's democracy, the rule of the mob. Now when we put it into more Americanized political terms, it's the rule of the people. And while that may sound good in print, the founders of democracy in our modern day form realized that the people can be manipulated into accepting whatever they want the people to accept. Let's go on with this subject of the Illuminati and its symbols. You will find the symbol of this secret society on the back of a $1 bill. On the back of the dollar bill, on the left-hand side, you will see the pyramid with an all-seeing eye, the eye of Horus, the Egyptian god of light, the Egyptian god, God's son. And you will see beneath the pyramid 1776 spelled out in Roman numerals, and the words Anut Kopias over the top of the pyramid. Anut Kopias is translated to mean our enterprise. Anut, our enterprise. Kopias is translated to mean has been crowned with success or is crowned with success. Therefore, Anut Kopias is our enterprise is now a success. And then to find out what enterprise that it was a success, as on the bottom of the pyramid, Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new order of the world, the new world order. Well, if we remember that Germany was the home of the concept of the new world order, Adolf Hitler, his entire motivation was to establish a new world order. But in order to establish a new world order, you had to destroy the old world order. And that is exactly what Hitler set out to do, destroy all of the old aristocracy, power bases in Europe, and set up a new world order. Which brings me now to the Masonic lodges in south of Germany and their connections with the French Revolution. And there is tremendous amount of information on that subject, and we're not going to go into it today. Suffice it to say that there was a tremendous amount of Freemasonic activity in the French Revolution, in the Mexican Revolution, in the American Revolution, and on all other revolutions going on throughout the world. There are many, many connections between Freemasons in government, Freemasons in banking, Freemasons in fraternal orders, operating and working together. But we don't know that. And while our people are going into, at this time, into the Middle East, we're not aware of the fact that what is going on in the Middle East is a war between secret societies, factions, occult movements that we don't know anything about. Has nothing whatsoever to do with oil, has nothing whatsoever to do with a conflict that America should be concerned with. It has to do with some very old and ancient Freemasonic folklore. I'd like to show to you also from this book, I'd like to read to you from Fire in the Minds of Men in the introduction something very interesting and very important as we get into the symbols of the Illuminati and symbols of the Freemasonic orders. Very big.
Definitely agree. Do you have any idea what that is?
Yes, I certainly do. I haven't spent 40 years with this subject not to know.
The ancient world mysteries.
Picture producers and all those kind of people in Hollywood calling me, this was back in '89, talking about the video Matrix, and it was basically what you see in the movie. It talked about how one thing is said to be one thing, it's actually another, and I got phone calls from very famous people telling me they had seen it, and then I was surprised to see later on it comes out in a movie using the same term. But I've always been interested in the occult. Occult is simply a word meaning hidden, and so much of our powers in this world and the way things work are hidden, and power. And I got all kinds of movie stars and to place that weight. So now what you're doing is you are standing under the subject. And this is where we get the word understanding. You need to go to the basis, the fundamental foundation on which things sit in order to understand. And I have discovered many years ago that words and magical systems dominate the world that we live in. There is, in point of fact, a magical matrix at work. I discovered this a long time ago, and as Stephen brought out, I did a video called Matrix of Power, and I got all kinds of movie stars and motion picture producers and all those kind of people in Hollywood calling me, this was back in '89, talking about the video Matrix, and it was basically what you see in the movie. It talked about how one thing is said to be one thing, it's actually another. And I got phone calls from very famous people telling me they had seen it, and then I was surprised to see later on it comes out in a movie using the same term. But I've always been interested in the occult. Occult is simply a word meaning hidden, and so much of our powers in this world and the way things work are hidden. And the more one looks at this subject of how the world actually works, you begin to see that there's a magical system, and I'm telling you, there really is a magical system dominating the world of the Western civilization. And for 1,000 years before the Roman Empire existed in Northern Europe, basically Western Europe,
There was a magical priesthood called the Druids, and the Druids still even exist to this day. And it was a very legitimate political, social, educational, religious institution dominating Europe for thousands of years. And they were referred to as the Druids. They were actually from the Phoenician Canaanite system in the Middle East. The Phoenician Canaanites formed the basis for the ancient Druidic system, and that's even older. But in the ancient Druidic system, there were many powerful symbols and emblems. One of the most interesting symbols in Druidism was a magic wand, like Merlin the magician with his magic wand. Magic wands were always made out of the wood of a holly tree. It was made out of hollywood. And we're still seeing the magic of the wood of the holly tree. Hollywood, motion pictures, television. And once you begin to see the symbols and realize that the symbols for the national coats of arms for countries, the flags, the seals, the presidential seals, the emblems for the logos and emblems on corporations, especially the corporate emblems for motion pictures and television companies like Columbia Broadcasting System. CBS has the eye. The Colombian system goes back to the Colombian faction of the Illuminati back in the early 1700s, not the late 1700s. And you begin to see why space shuttle is called Columbia. You have Columbia University, Columbia Pictures, Columbia Broadcasting. Columbia is a very interesting word, and it's connected to the Jesuits. Incidentally, the Jesuits are very pronouncedly involved in the destiny of this country. The Jesuit order is very much involved in the founding of this country and the direction of its politics. Georgetown University, from which many of the presidents and big shots in government get their education, is a Jesuit university. And once you begin to see how words and terms and symbols are used, and of course symbols are extraordinarily important in world affairs. If you don't think so, you know, if you don't understand the concept of how important symbols are, put a swastika on your arm and go to your local synagogue and watch the reaction you'll get. Symbols mean things to people. And the powers that be in this world have set up a world of symbols and emblems and terms and catchphrases. And once you understand how this system works, it's fascinating, because for the first time, the world opens up to you a whole new perspective on how government works, on how banks work, on how institutions and education, and why we have something called the police. Where does the word sheriff come from? Why do you have government? Once you begin to see how these words are used and put together, all of a sudden it opens up, as I said, a whole new perspective on how stuff is happening. Because in the world today, most people look at the things which are happening in this world and they can't make heads or tails out of it. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's destructive, it's lunacy, it's chaos. But in point of fact, the things which are happening in this world are not chaos at all. It is very well planned, organized, and directed. There is a hidden agenda, so to speak. And it's been my desire to uncover this hidden agenda that uses terms and emblems and symbols. Let me give you an example of how words, my friend William Henry says you put an S in front of the word word and it becomes swords. The words are swords. They are cutting things. Humans are word responsive creatures. We respond to people's words. When you begin to see how words are used, let me give you an example of the magic. Why do you have to go to court You go to court because you play basketball on a court. You play tennis on a court. How do you play tennis on a court? You play with a racket. Why? Because the people that develop it know it's a racket. That's where we get the term. Consequently, you need to understand that the words which are used by government and by education and by the systems under which we live are not by chance. In a court, the whole idea in a court is to put the ball back in the other guy's court. So this team of attorneys, they stand up and throw the ball back at the other team.